About that opportunity. So, give you Blake Boles.
Thanks. I want to start with some questions. What brought you out here tonight? Like, what is going on in your life, or your kid's life, or your family life that's on your mind? And you thought maybe you'll learn something tonight. Please, someone kick us off.
Okay. I'm Rachel, and my child is 7, and they're a new member here. Just started after the start of the new year. And we're brand new to this whole concept of self-directed learning without going to an actual school. We just moved to New Mexico we just moved here from New Mexico in December, and realized that first grade just wasn't really working for our family, and neither really did kindergarten. And when we visited this center, it felt amazing, but we're brand newbies, and we don't really know, one, what to expect as our kid learns and grows, and how to support them through their education process. Getting into college, how does that work? And then also, how do we explain this to the other people in our life?
Oh boy. So self-directed learning 101 and how to explain to muggles.
Yeah.
So, great, we will touch on those topics. Everyone's here for a reason. I'd love to hear another one. Yes, please.
I went to a self-directed, what could be called a self-directed or alternative college, but back in the mid-90s when I applied for Region, the only thing they looked at in admission was SAT scores and GPA. So even a school like that, back then, that's the only thing they looked at, was very traditional. So I'm here to find out more about
what it's looking like in the 2020s.
What it's looking like now. Yeah.
We will talk about that too.
So I've got a while.
Yeah, good question. What college did you go to?
Evergreen.
Evergreen. One of the young people I profiled in the beginning was an Evergreen student also. Why else are we here? Yes, please.
I want to know how to get to college after being a member here.
How do I go to college if I'm in this hippie utopia? How do I go out into the real world? We will talk about that. Very practical, yes.
I'm actually not convinced my kid needs to go to college. I don't feel like he has to do that. He's here, he's 13. I'm just interested in what other pathways. I mean, I know there's a lot of pathways, especially now with all the moving technology and all that. So I'm just curious to see your take on what other alternatives that you think are a good way to do.
Yeah.
And then in the answer to her question, just in my own personal thing, starting my son last year here, I got a million whys, and I was like, because that's what I want to do for my kid. That's the only reason.
Fantastic.
And that's for me, is for nobody else, and nobody has to accept or whatever. It's my family, it's my kid, and everyone's gonna judge me, but that's okay.
Sounds like you have come a long way already.
I'm trying.
We will talk about the alternatives to college, and there will be open time at the end for just any random Q&A about anything that comes up in the talk. How about one more person? The reason you came tonight, through the snow. The first real winter storm, I've been told.
Yeah. My daughter is 14, my oldest, and she's been struggling the past couple of years in middle school and after the pandemic, and with anxiety and getting to school. And so homeschooling is, home education is something that's very new to us, a new thing that we're trying. She's kind of resistant to it at the moment, but so that's kind of where we're at. And then this kind of touches a little bit more on, mine or my husband's, what's next? What does this look like? If we do this, or if we do this for how long, what could that be?
And
What are the possibilities?
And it's such a seemingly clear path on the traditional path, and then for both young people and for parents, it's like, what even happens next? How do we transition? Totally common questions and anxieties. And there's a lot of exciting possibility in all of it. So let me get started with my presentation. 2 Octobers ago, I was biking from Germany to Portugal. And I was couch surfing in the south of France. And I didn't realize it when I showed up at my host's house, but there were 2 other couch surfers there, spending the night in the additional spare room that this host had. And they were Lily and Elena, and I said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And they had the most fascinating story that I interviewed them on the spot for my podcast. You can find it online. But I want to share with you just a few clips from Lily and Elena.
Tell me about your bike trip. Where did it start? How long will it be? And where do you think it might end?
We start in our hometown at the Elbe River, Hamburg, yes, and drove then to, what was the first stop? I think Bremen, then Osnabrück, Köln, Cologne, and then we drove the Rhine down the Rhine to the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, and there we stayed some days to rest and get new energy, and then we drove to Strasbourg, and there we took a train to Lyon, and now we're back on our bikes and driving down the Rhone. But where we will go, we don't know. Our first goal is the Montpellier. Yes, exactly. But then we don't know. Maybe we will go on. Maybe we will stay there. Maybe we will go back. It's possible that 1 week and then that's it. It's possible that we will go on for 2 months. Nobody knows. Neither we do.
So Lily and Elena are 19. They're German. And this is what they're doing after they finished high school. They did go through totally normal school. And when they say drive, they're actually pronouncing the German word, which also means to cycle. And so they didn't drive their bikes, they cycled their bikes. And so they'd come from the north of Germany, they're now in the south of France, they were going to continue onwards. And I was just blown away that these are 2 19-year-old young women on a solo bike trip, but the best was yet to come.
Today we're in Montreal at couch surfing host, and we're staying some night at couch surfing hosts, but we also have a tent with us, so we can also stay in camping places, or we also asked people to camp in their garden, but that's much easier in Germany than in France. Yeah, because our problem is that we don't speak French, and the most French people don't speak English or German. So it's very hard to ask them if we, like strangers, can camp in their garden. But we will see, maybe we'll have luck one day. And in Germany it worked out very well, so it was one of the nicest experiences, that total strangers let us camp in their gardens and gave us food and so much love. We haven't thought before.
So it's been all positive experiences on this trip?
Yes, really, really positive. Yeah, especially how nice people are. It was really, yeah.
So, if you didn't catch that, Lily and Elena, when they were cycling through Germany, would knock on the doors of strangers and say, "Can we camp with our tent in your backyard?" And they received almost 100% positive replies. And they told me, and they say more in the podcast, that they would often get fed, and they'd be asked, "What else do you need?" This is what Lily and Elena were doing instead of going to college when they were 19. We're going to circle back to them, but first I want you to meet someone else. This is Ben. Ben is someone who I just met recently and is someone I'm mentoring for this year, 2023. Ben uses they, them pronouns. Ben is a lifelong unschooler, grew up with 3 siblings near Philadelphia, was super into coding and robotics and making videos when they were young, but is now super into making videos. And at age 18, is thinking, I could go to college. Ben's parents were always a bit anxious about making sure that college was a possibility. Most of Ben's siblings are in college, but Ben has decided for the time being to focus on making videos. And so Ben is planning with a girlfriend to go on a year-long road trip and develop a 9-part video series documenting how self-directed education looks in different parts of the United States. And so that means that those two might be showing up here at the Macomber Center to interview people and maybe even make a single episode in their documentary about this place. So keep an eye out for them. Ben does not have any current plans to go to college. And here's one more person I want you to meet. This is someone I've known for a long time. This is Kina. This is what Kina was like when I met her at age 14.
Go to see when the sun goes down. Ain't nobody boy in town. You're my guy, just like the doctor ordered. You're so sweet, you make my mouth water. I want candy, I want candy, I want candy, I want candy.
This is what happens when you run a month-long writing retreat for a bunch of teenage unschoolers. You buy an espresso machine for them. One of the unschoolers' parents owns a coffee shop in Seattle, gives you an unlimited quantity of espresso, and you give them free reign to make their own espresso. We did have to rein it in a bit after Kina and Hannah started drinking somewhere on the order of 8 shots a day. I was like, okay, we got to pump the brakes here. So I met Kina when she was 14. She had recently dropped out of school after 8th grade and went to become a full-time unschooler. And she went on one of my Unschool Adventures programs. She continued being a total self-directed learner for a number of years. She decided to start taking community college classes in Portland, Oregon, where she was living, and then decided for pretty normal reasons to go to college when she was 18. She wanted the social experience. It was kind of expected in her family that people go to college. And so she went, she got into Evergreen, which is a very self-directed, very unschool-friendly college out there. And she just had a transcript that her mom made for her that included like her basic unschooling activities. She did have her community college classes, but she didn't take any standardized tests. No GED, no ACT, no SAT. She thought she wanted to be a marine biologist. Pretty quickly she realized that wasn't for her, and instead she switched to major in just general liberal arts. She took off a semester to join me to help run an Unschool Adventures trip to New Zealand in 2016. This is us feeling pretty self-conscious because we're in a very stereotypical New Zealand scene with like sheep and water and green hills. We're like, God, we're just fulfilling stereotypes here. So Kina got 16 credits and got paid by me to go to New Zealand for 6 weeks. Well done, Kina. And she ended up in a 3-year grad program to do social work and therapy with a focus on child and family therapy. She graduated in May 2021, and now she is a full-fledged adult with a bunch of letters behind her name. There, she did it. Congratulations, Kina. You did it. This talk is called Alternative Paths to College. This is a double entendre. What does this mean? Are we talking about alternative paths to getting into college? Because that's what I wrote my first book about, how you go to college without going to high school. Or are we talking about alternatives to college? That was my second book, Better Than College. Well, let's just talk about all of it, okay? And if you want like the punchline, pick up my last book, Why You're Still Sending Your Kids to School. Published in May 2020, when literally no one was sending their kids to school. My editor told me I win the award for the worst timed book title. I want to first talk about getting into college as an unschooler, or as a self-directed learner, or as someone going to one of these super self-directed centers like we are right here at the Macomber Center. And long story short, it's not that hard. There's a lot of anxiety that comes into it in the beginning of the journey, but pretty much once you start talking with people who have been homeschooling or unschooling or alternative schooling for a while, and especially ones with older kids, you realize that there's no clear path, but there are so many different little rivulets that will get you back into the traditional higher education system. I collected a bunch of stories for why are you still sending your kids to school in 2019, just to make sure that everything I wrote 10 years before that was still accurate, and luckily it still was. There are all these different stories of people using all these different methods to get into higher education. Sometimes you really do have to take the SAT or the ACT. Sometimes, for some reason, a school thinks it's super important that you have a GED or other official high school diploma equivalent. Sometimes schools are super happy with the Microsoft Word mom-created homeschool diploma. It's shocking how often that works. And so the answer to the how do you get into college without the traditional background question is always, it depends. We're going to talk more about this in just a moment, but the research is still there. We still get into colleges without going to high school. It's always a little bit different. It's doable. Some Macomber parents submitted some questions before I was putting together the presentation that I decided to integrate in. And so one of the questions was, if my kid wants to study X, I removed X because we're kind of agnostic to the X here. In college, should we invest time in doing SAT preparation? Should we do extracurriculars? Should we do this or that? What's the answer?
It depends.
It depends. It depends. Are we trying to get into a highly selective college, or are we getting into a college where they accept 98% of people who apply? Are we talking about community college, public university? We're talking about Harvard? Are we talking about a foreign university? Are we talking about something that's super specialized? It depends. And the golden arrow for slicing through this problem is always this: to go talk to the college and then to go talk to people who have done this before. Specifically, if you go to a college admissions office and you say, hey, I want to study math at your college, maybe. Do you know anyone else who has been homeschooled or otherwise alternatively educated who got into your math program? And I bet you there's probably just like 2 or 3 people who check that box. Or maybe they're even recent graduates. And then you say, can I talk with these people? You'd be surprised at how often this works. And then you say, hey, what did you do, Mrs. Homeschooler, who's now in the math program, to get into this? And what kind of hurdles did you have to jump over? And you just do a few informational interviews, the kind of stuff that most teenagers will never, ever do when they're applying to colleges. It's shocking what we do when we go to college, right? We open up U.S. News and World Report, and we say, this college is higher ranked than that college. Clearly, I have to go here. It's lunacy. Go talk to people. Just choose a few colleges that you think might be the kind of college you want to go to. Go to the admissions officer, email them, explain your situation, say, I'm a special case, I'm looking for some guidance, and they will help you. That's it. All right, I want to talk about the pandemic. In fall 2020, when I realized I was not going to be running the Unschool Adventures round the world trip that I had planned for early 2021, I pivoted and I created an online course. We called it Self-Directed Learning 101. And I had about 25 teenagers who joined from all over the world, most of the US. And we met on Zoom twice a week for 12 weeks. And this was actually a really cool exercise for me to bring together all of the previous work and research and interesting stuff that I've done into one place for a bunch of teenagers on Zoom. And we got to have silly backgrounds and be weird. Zoom can be fun sometimes. So I want to share with you some of the slides from Self-Directed Learning 101 related to college. This was one of the discussions we had in that online course that was most interesting for the participants, as they told me later on. What is college for? Also, what is high school for? But let's really talk about what college is for. And we talked about 2 broad ways that people think about higher education: skill building, or what some people call human capital, or signaling. Does anyone have a guess what signaling means in this context? Raise your hand. I would love someone. Yes, in the back.
They see the BSCS on your resume, and they're like,
All those letters. Yes. What else? What else? A little bit deeper even. What could signaling mean? What would one signal with college?
Maybe your social or economic status, so people in your community or in your network.
Whatever it is, you are a desirable person. If you go to college, you are signaling, check me out. To dig deeper into this skills versus signaling question, let's do a few thought experiments. I want you to genuinely think about these thought experiments. Would you rather have a degree from Princeton, but none of the actual learning that went into it? Or would you rather have all the learning from a 4-year degree in Princeton, but no degree?
It depends.
All right, think about it for 3 seconds. 2. I'm going to ask for your hands in just a second here. If you would rather have all the learning from a 4-year Ivy League degree, but you can't have the degree itself to show off or tell anyone about, raise your hand. All right, it's about a third of us, maybe a half. All right, hands down. If you would rather just have that sweet, sweet Princeton degree without any of the hard work that went into it, raise your hands. Be honest. We're about 50-50, and this is clearly a skewed audience, right? We're more into the skill building or the authentic learning. When you run this thought experiment with groups, more general audience groups, overwhelmingly, it's the degree. Even without the learning that comes with it. Why? Don't answer that. Another thought experiment. In economics, there's something called the sheepskin effect, which is in reference to the old degrees were printed on sheepskin. And what this describes is how when somebody does like 3 years of a 4-year college program, and then they drop out without earning a degree, they actually gain almost none of the economic benefit of that degree. Think about this. If college was really about skill building and learning, and every single semester that you go is more skills and more important awareness kind of put into your bank account, then if you did 3.999 years of a 4-year bachelor's degree, but then you dropped out, but you could prove that you did 3.999 years, you should get essentially 100% of the economic benefits of a bachelor's degree. But what do you really get? If you say, hey, I love this job, I have a high school Mom, you're in HR. I have this high school diploma, I did almost all of a bachelor's degree, but then I dropped out. What does that make you think?
Well, with my HR hat on, I take into consideration the skill building. I do. There's a lot of emphasis now on looking at jobs and whether or not you need a degree. But in the past, it would be, I'm sorry, you don't have the bachelor's degree.
Yeah. So things are moving in the right direction,
They
however
are.
slowly, but pretty much it's like, hey, you don't have the degree. You didn't pull it off. This is more evidence for the idea that college degrees are more about signaling than skill building. Finally, this is highly relevant today. Maybe not here at the Macomber Center. Let's go back into high school for a second, though. When there's a snow day for average high school students, is everyone happy or sad? Happy. Because no one has to go to school, but you're still making the same progress towards getting your high school diploma. But if school was really about building skills and everything was actually important learning, students should be sad to not have the opportunity to go to school for the day because they are missing out on the thing they are paying for. Yet that's so seldom the case. This is why I like to tell parents, if you're not sure what is right for your kid in terms of alternative schools or homeschooling, just find the thing that they would be the most sad if it was canceled for the day. That's probably the thing that they should be doing. Oh my gosh, where does this all leave us? This is just kind of dystopian now. Signaling. This is what signaling is. You are telling society that you have 3 things: intelligence, work ethic, and the ability to conform to social norms. I'm not coming up with this stuff. This is from a really excellent book called The Case Against Education, written by an economist. Highly recommend it. It's a bit challenging to read. It'll make you think twice about a lot of things. But even if we don't like the realities behind signaling with college degrees, we have to accept that this is how the world works to a certain degree. And when this is confronting that question of what happens when we go out to the real world, still, if you want to have a real world job, you have to prove to people somehow that you have some form of intelligence, that you have some kind of work ethic, and yes, that you are not going to show up to the job on the first day wearing your underwear on your head and speaking a different language. You have to conform to like the basic norms of like, yes, we are part of this society. So this stuff is important, but does it mean that you have to go through school and college in order to do it? There was a lot of me copy-pasting my floating head onto things in Self-Directed Learning 101. So this is what Yoda Blake has to say about signaling for self-directed learners, like young people in this room, who do want to go to college. So this is about what do you do if you don't have the high school degree signal and you do want to go into higher education? You got to have some ambitious goals. You got to document the fact that you're working on those goals. You probably have to take some standardized tests. People don't like hearing this, but I have seen standardized tests being one of the most useful, highly functional tools for young people coming from very alternative backgrounds who quickly and efficiently need to show their intellectual prowess to an institution of higher education that really does care about that. The SATs, the ACTs, IQ tests, they're all deeply flawed. Yes, they prove your ability to take this kind of standardized test more than anything else. Yes, granted. They are imperfect tools, but there are few tools that are much better than them, especially given that you can prepare for these exams completely independently on your own. You don't have to go be associated with some institution to do it. You can just say, like, what am I missing? Fill in the gaps, get it done, ready to go. So there is an advantage to standardized tests. Finally, I've been doing a lot of travel in Europe recently. You know what Europe doesn't have? Community colleges. You know what most of the rest of the world doesn't have? Community colleges. We are incredibly lucky in the United States to have the community college system. I am realizing as time goes by, having these 2-year institutions that are inexpensive and local and everywhere, and they let you join if you're 16 years old and just sign up for one class here or there and pay essentially no money. This is like magic. And then they give you college credits. Ugh. This is especially magic for homeschoolers and unschoolers and other young people who have flexible schedules, want to see what college level work is about, and dabble a little bit without going whole hog into the package deal. And they're really good for when 4-year colleges say, like, can this kid really handle academics? You're like, well, I took these 4 community college classes and I got decent grades, so yes, I can. It works. Who was asking about not going to college? Where'd that come from? Yes. I'm big on describing self-directed learning as consensual learning. I think that you can sign up for a military boot camp, and as long as you know what you're getting yourself into, and you are fully consenting to it, you know that you can say no, that you can leave, then anything goes. Any level of structure goes. This is the big problem with college. A lot of us don't seriously consider options away from college. And so can we really consent to going to college if we don't think there's any other path to becoming an adult? Let's talk about this. These are still slides from Self-Directed Learning 101. First, let's deal with some realities here. There are some very difficult things to do as an adult if you don't have at least a 4-year degree or some kind of specific license. All of these fields, not impossible, but pretty darn difficult to get into without a college degree. And so if you are a young person who decides you really want to be a research scientist, it's going to be really challenging, perhaps not impossible, but really, really, really challenging to not go through some form of conventional higher education. Let's just put that on the table. And there are other fields where I see a lot of self-directed learners going to without any form of college. And this is a shorter list than the previous one, but within it, there are so many possibilities. I'm going to hold my tongue here for a second. Here's a challenge that I gave the Self-Directed Learning 101 crew, which was, All right, some of you, because we talked more about skilled trades in that workshop, and I said some of you might have some bad impressions of like doing HVAC or something because you think you'll never be able to make that much money. And I said, all right, you got 10 minutes, small teams, breakout rooms, go. Find 6-figure jobs that do not require 4-year degrees. I'm not going to make you guys do this in small teams right now, don't worry. But I am curious if anyone has any off the top of the head ideas about how this works. Yes?
Plumbers, electricians.
Plumbers and electricians, do they make 6 figures now? All right, just become a plumber or electrician. That's pretty straightforward. Other ideas? Genuine question.
I think truck drivers can, long-haul truck drivers.
Police, overtime,
Any place where you get overtime, probably. Yeah.
software engineer.
Say again?
Software engineer.
Software engineer, yes. There are lots of possibilities. This was a big eye-opener for them, not because we all need to make 6 figures, but because not feeling constrained by not going to college is really important. Just like not feeling constrained by not going to high school is really important. Otherwise we get anxious and we jump ship before the magic happens. This was my answer to that question. Self-employment is what has worked for me, and it's how a lot of people who I see doing work that maybe caps out at $50,000 a year, when they become the owners of their own businesses, then the upside of being able to have much more financial security goes through the roof. And luckily, you don't need many credentials to become self-employed. There's my head again, in case I missed it. It just made so many appearances. They were probably so sick of that by the end of this 12-week course, but that's why I'm self-employed, because I can be my little small dictator in my little universes. This is one of the last slides from the college section of Self-Directed Learning 101. This is where I thought I might get some angry emails from parents. They said, what is college really about, everyone? Can we just get down to brass tacks? Is college the only way to become an enlightened human being? If you don't go to college, are you just pond scum? Some people think that. Is this the only way to become an adult in our society? There used to be formal rite of passage ceremonies where you go from childhood to adulthood. And now, what do we have? You graduate from high school, and probably you graduate from college. That's how you know you are now an adult. This is an important psychological thing that lots of young people need. So that's one reason you might want to go to college. The venture capitalist Peter Thiel once said, questioning higher education is extremely dangerous. It's like telling the world that Santa Claus doesn't exist. And I think that's very true. Some people treat college as if you don't do this, it's like you're not part of the group. Maybe that's tied in with the Enlightenment. Why does college cost so much? Maybe because some of them have lazy rivers. Some of them have the nicest gyms you'll ever see in your life. One person told me, college is great, and it's kind of like a 4-year cruise ship now. It's just a lot of fun. The best parties you'll ever go to. Okay, perhaps that's true. If you want to go to some really great parties, I think San Diego State still has some open room. What about if you were the first person in your family to ever go to college? There's very good data that going to competitive college is one of the best ways to go from low income bracket into high income bracket. It truly can be a ticket to opportunity and mobility. That's a genuine reason to go to college. On the other hand, is this just a way for very wealthy people to pay for test prep classes to get their kids into Ivy League schools to continue the family tradition? Is this not about mobility at all? I see that argument also. This is where I thought parents would start being like, all right, Blake, slow down. Is it really just an elaborate way for employers to grade us and rank us so that they don't have to spend so much time interviewing us? Highly probable. And lastly, and this is much more US dependent, is this just a way to get us to take on a ton of debt so that we can never escape the normal economic system ever again? I'm going to show you a video right now, which illustrates this point much better than I can by standing up here and talking about it.
I got mine when I was 18.
I got them when I was 21.
Student loans.
Student
I
loans.
contracted student loans at 19, and one of millions.
Almost half of all Americans between the ages of 18 and 22 are fiscally active. Many do not understand the risk they are taking when they contract a student loan.
All of my friends were going to college. I just wanted to fit in. Now I have a degree in comparative philosophy, no job, and a full-blown case of student loans.
Studies show that those infected with student loan debt are less likely to date regularly or have bed frames. Even if not exposed to student loan debt directly, they can be transmitted by legal marriage.
I married the love of my life. Except she didn't tell me about her student loan debt. Now it's our student loan debt.
It is possible to lead a healthy, active, fulfilling life with student loan debt. Just not for very long.
I used to love cereal. Then I contracted student loan debt, and now it's all I eat. I miss protein.
Student loans only get worse with time and can manifest in many ways. Studio apartments, having roommates well into your 30s, top ramen, and driving a car older than yourself. If you have been exposed to student loan debt, contact an accountant today. There is no cure for student loan debt, and there is no hope.
So have rich parents.
Have rich parents.
Have rich parents.
Or play the lotto. Hey, you never know. Paid for by the New York State Lottery.
Great video, right? I was searching for that. It's 10 years old, but still right on point. This isn't a uniquely American problem because when I talk with young people in Europe, they tell me, yeah, I had to pay about 500 euros for college last year. That's about $500. And I'm like, you mean for books? They're like, no, for everything. And the state gives us some money for living expenses too. I'm like, whoa, that's different. So here in the US, when we make the decision to go to college, we are gambling with two quantities, time and money. In Europe, you're still gambling with your time. Just because college is free doesn't mean you should necessarily go. It doesn't mean that you're going to go spend 4 years well or productively, or that the opportunity cost, i.e. what you could have been doing with that same time elsewhere, whether employed or doing something else, would not have been a better investment for your life. So it's just not that simple. It's not as simple as make college free for everyone and everything's hunky-dory. But still, would you let an 18-year-old put $30,000 on their credit card? I wouldn't. Why do we do this? It's insane. It's not all that bad. Did you know that the Ivy Leagues, more or less, will not charge you anything if your family makes less than $65,000 a year? This is real. This is true. This is a good thing. This is a genuinely good thing. I just downloaded this from Yale's webpage today. And so, if your family makes this amount of money, this is how much the median student will actually pay for everything related to Yale for that year. That's pretty good compared to thinking about the sticker price. I do know homeschoolers and unschoolers and alternative school students who have gotten full rides and other financial aid. You're not completely shut out of that if you don't have a traditional accredited high school diploma. That's another worry that a lot of families have. It is trickier. It's harder. There are fewer opportunities. But it's not impossible. It's like that. The same answer to everything else. It depends. Finally, I said, listen, kids, it doesn't matter whether you go to college or not, as long as you're figuring out a way to do what you love. And they're like, Blake, how do we do what we love? And I say, let me show you a Venn diagram. In the top left of the Venn diagram is stuff you're very passionate about. Self-directed learners are extremely familiar with passion. You feel that little kindling inside your chest. It makes me want to play Minecraft for 22 straight hours. The passion. In the top right, we have skill. This is stuff you can do, stuff you are good at. And finally, in the bottom, we have the market. All right, quiz question. If you only have a passion for something, but you're no good at it and no one will pay you to do it, what are you?
Dreaming.
Green, close. That's not the word I'm going to use. You are a fan. If you like soccer, but you're no good at soccer, and no one will pay you to be no good at soccer, you are a soccer fan. Congratulations, that's fine. We need fans. All right, what if you are good at doing something, but you don't love it, and nobody will pay you for it? This is just a skill or a talent. My mom had me take piano lessons when I was young. I learned how to play many songs. Now the only song I remember how to play is Bone Sweet Bone. Yes, which uses about 4 keys from the piano.
4 notes.
Let's say I had remembered all the piano that I took in those piano lessons, but I didn't love piano and no one's going to pay me to play Bone Sweet Bone. That's just a talent. It's not even a talent in my case. And finally, if there's just something that the market desires, but you don't have anything to do with it yet, that's just a need that's out there. So we're defining some terms here. Now I'm going to have you guess again, and I bet we're going to get some victories. What's it called when you are passionate about something, you have the skills, but no one will pay you to do it? What's
Hobby.
A hobby. What's it called when you are good at something, you get paid to do it, but you have no love for it? A job! Yes! Being slightly cynical here. And what's it called when there's something you really love? Let's say you love to play Minecraft. And you know that there are some people out there on YouTube who get paid to play Minecraft or Twitch or whatever it is. But you do not have the skills yet to get paid to do that thing that you love. What's that?
Oh, dream.
Yeah, dream. Dream job. That's the weirdest one. Yeah, I know, dream.
I was close.
You were close. And so this is what I do with the teenagers I've worked with. I try to nudge them into the middle there. Yes, sometimes you can get by very well with a job that pays you well, and you can do the stuff that you love, your hobbies and your fan stuff on the side. That's called moonlighting. That's cool too. But for me personally, the only thing I've ever wanted to accept is right there smack dab in the middle. This doesn't matter where you go to college or you don't go to college or where you go to college. If you can achieve this, you're doing it. Another question that came in from a parent. I really like all this self-directed learning stuff at the K through 12 level. Are there options in the higher education world that are still very self-directed, very unschooling? There are some options. Let me tell you about them. This is a picture from the very first group that I took abroad in 2008. And we were there in Bariloche, Argentina, the ski and chocolate capital of Argentina. And they spent the first 2 weeks of our 6-week trip living with homestay families and going to Spanish classes for 4 hours a day. This was not a very expensive thing for them to do. They got to meet other students who were there, also doing homestays and Spanish classes. They got to hang out with each other in the afternoons, do stuff on the weekends, go hiking, eat chocolate. How many of the other students, and this is a multi-age group, at this language school in Bariloche, do you think were forced to be there? It was about 0. Yeah. Everyone who was going to this language school wanted to be there. Some of them were 50 years old, some of them were 18 years old. I consider this a self-directed environment to a large extent, even if it feels structured, because everyone is consenting to be there. So this is something you can do instead of going to college. Choose a foreign country, go to a city there, go to a language school, learn the language, hang out with other travelers and language learners, stay there for a few months. That's a great thing to do instead of college. It doesn't cost too much money. There are gap year programs. Don't want to pay $40,000 to go to college? Pay $40,000 to do a gap year instead. There are some very expensive gap year programs out there. I put up this one, the High Desert Center, because I'm friends with the people who run it, and they offer pretty much the most affordable gap year program out there. So they are a very good example. Go live with a bunch of other young adults, ages 17 to 23, out in the sticks in western Colorado. Poop in a composting toilet. Sleep in a straw bale house. Help construct the next version of straw bale house for the next students who will come. do partner dance, go road trip to Mexico, learn how to do consensus decision making. This is the stuff that a lot of young adults really want, which is not college, because this is real. This feels real in a way that academics still does not yet feel real. So whatever a gap year is, it can be structured, expensive, less expensive, it should feel real. If you want to go poop on a composting toilet, you know where to look. It's a really great program. And there's more. There are programs out there where you can go be intern and make $50,000 a year at age 18, working for some tech company and doing a little bit of liberal arts curriculum on the side. That's Praxis. It's run by a bunch of grown homeschoolers. There are these wonderful colleges that are totally not normal colleges. Check out the colleges that change lives, webpage. But Evergreen, for example, is one of those, one that Hina went to, in which everyone has to design their own degree, no matter what. When I went to college, I thought I wanted to study astronomy and physics until I took some actual physics and some actual math and realized I was like, oh, linear algebra, no. And I ejected, and I decided to design my own major in alternative education theory. And it worked out really well, but I had to fight to design my own major. It was not easy. I had to find this one lady with this one filing cabinet in this one building who was like, all right, come here, sign this paper. And so there are colleges out there that are really, truly into self-directed learning and self-authorship. And finally, for those of you who are like, I don't need any of this. I'm going to go program, make $300,000 out the gate later. We got one in the front. There are coding boot camps that you might have heard of. There are also self-directed learning coding spaces. One that I just learned about from my podcast last year is called the Macomber Center. This was founded by a grown unschooler. It's in New York City. You go there, it's tuition free. You go there and you work on projects and you learn your coding language independently, but in a team environment. And the way that they make money is that some of these self-directed programmers get recruited by the tech companies, and then they get a fat payout for the finder's fee. So there are some really cool alternatives to college out there. There's not that many. You have to dig hard. You won't always get into them, but they do exist. But we in the United States, we like to pay for things. Everything needs to be a program. I challenge you to think, what would Lily and Elena do? WWLED. They did not sign up for a program that would take them on a bicycle tour from Germany to Spain. They didn't do anything. They decided to get some bicycles, put some bags on them, and start writing and knocking on people's doors to see if they could camp in their backyard. This is the massively DIY approach. They were having a gap year of their lives. They both took about 2 years away from school, and now this year they're both going back into higher education after taking a double gap year. How much did they spend on this? Essentially nothing. They were spending less than 10 euros a day on food when I met them. That's $300 a month, no other expenses. That's a gap year too. What would Lily and Elena do? Okay, the final parent question that I had time to integrate. How do I address a teen's fears about where they will be in 5 years' time if they take an unconventional path? This is so common, and it's so real. And I want to tell you that there are some stories out there that can help you feel better about looking down the path and not knowing where it goes. I created this website a few years ago, grownunschools.com, to just collect the stories of unschoolers. And unschooler just broadly means anyone who went to a place like this for most of their middle school and high school career. So probably at least 4 years or 6 years or more. And there were many lifelong unschoolers that created profiles on this website. And they're all in their 20s or 30s now. And there are ones who went to college and ones who didn't go to college. Ones that are self-employed, ones that have totally traditional jobs. There's PhDs, there's people just in the service industry. And so they go everywhere. So you can find people who have already gone down this path and you can say, okay, yes, you did this, great. But there will still be a little question in the back of your head. You will say, was Blake just cherry picking? What does that mean? Someone. I know this is kind of obvious to half of us. Yes.
The only taking the results that fit your model or theory.
Only taking the nice data.
Yeah, there you go.
This is a true, genuine concern, which is, do we only hear the stories of the Billie Eilishes of the world, grown unschooler, FYI? Do we only hear these massive success stories? You know, I'm so tired of the Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg stories, and they're not even good stories about dropouts. This is a real concern. And so we need to go to the data. We need to go to the research. And for me, this is the best way to answer that question, what happens 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line? And so when I wrote that last book, Why Are You Still Sending Your Kids to School?, I went over all the research that's out there. There's not a ton of it, but there is some. Peter Gray over at Boston College did a survey of grown unschoolers with Gina Riley, another research scientist in Hunter College in New York. There's studies from the Sudbury Valley School. There are studies from North Star over in Western Massachusetts, from these longer running institutions where you have extremely high autonomy and essentially kids get to do whatever they want for a long time. And in the end, the research says this: when it comes to long-term outcomes, like do they get to college? Do they do okay in college? Are they employed? Are they like reasonable, normal people? The answer is, actually the answer is, it's slightly more reassuring than it depends, is it doesn't seem to make a big difference. Whether you choose to go the homeschooling route or the conventional school route, whether you decide to go to college here or college there, it's kind of shockingly ambivalent. And it's much more tied, we could spend the whole 45 minutes talking about this, it's much more tied to socioeconomic status than it is to anything else. And to me, what this means is actually a relief. It means that if you are 13 years old, and you're like, should I go to this crazy alternative school where I can do whatever, but I have this anxiety that I'm falling behind all the time? Or should I go to regular school where I really don't like a lot of the aspects, but at least I feel normal? Just choose the one that is less traumatizing to you. And as long as you have relatively supportive parents, as long as you have some sort of community and some friends, and you have some form of engagement with what you're doing, it'll probably turn out okay. It's kind of a letdown when you get to it. You're like, the research just says it doesn't make a big difference. Yes, but I encourage you to look at it from the other side. Do what works. And this is another thing I really pressed in that last book was, don't subscribe to one model of alternative education. Don't say, I'm going to go to a Sudbury school forever and ever because that is the right path and that is the one truth to lead all the truths behind. No, maybe Sudbury school is cool for like 5 years. And then your kid's like, peace, middle school, let's go. Maybe unschooling works for a while and then it doesn't. Maybe public school works for a while and then it doesn't. Maybe Montessori and then Waldorf and then something else. We have to remain open and agnostic and flexible as parents and pay attention to the actual child standing in front of us instead of these notions and ideologies that are up there in our head. Respond to the child, not the ideal system. And they'll probably turn out fine. What's on this slide? What? Oh, yes. So this is my final slide. Doesn't matter whether you go to college or not, doesn't matter how you get there. This is some wonderful takeaway advice from a high school commencement speech that this guy, Paul Graham, who's a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley, never got to deliver because the school authorities vetoed him. I recommend you go find it. It's called What You'll Wish You'd Known, back in 2005. And I'm just going to condense one of my favorite parts of it for you. No matter who you are, he's talking to teenagers, no matter who you are, what you're doing, go look for smart people that are working on hard problems. That's all that matters. Go find a clump of these smart people and go hang out with them for a while. This could be talking about programming, this could be talking about philosophy, this could be talking about auto repairs. This is truly agnostic to the content. This is all you have to do as a young person. Find smart people working on hard, interesting problems. Go do that with them. If you can't find them, start your own group. Do it formally or informally, do it in college or outside of college. If you can do this, then you have a future. You are meaningfully engaged in the human project. If you don't do this, there are plenty of people who go to college and they don't do this. They just coast through classes. They avoid hard problems. If someone's too smart, they're considered a threat. Avoid them. And there are people who don't go to college ever and they do this very well. And they're just fine. That's my talk. Thank you very much.